You ran an agency for a number of years and you're one of the lucky few who was able to sell it. And now you're advising other agency owners. If you were compelled to start your own agency again, what would you do differently that you didn't know the first time around?
I mean, there's a lot. Do you just want me to rattle it off and you can kind of dig in wherever you feel interested or what?
Sure.
I think there's a lot of stuff that we did well that was basically all unintentional because it's a very unintentional start for us. But, kind of like starting at the front, I think the first thing we'd really do is actually like set some revenue goals and then reverse engineer how to actually meet them. Like we generally wanted to replace our salaries and that kind of stuff, but we didn't actually have any idea how to do that. We picked an hourly rate, we quoted out some stuff, and we kind of crossed our fingers and hoped that we would have the right amount of revenue at the end of the day. So, like, working backwards to like how many projects might we have to do, how many pitches might we have to do to land those projects, and how many leads or prospects might we actually need to talk to have those pitches in front of them, kind of thing. Just kind of reverse engineering, which is something we did later on, but at the start, we really didn't do that at all.
Hey, business leaders and marketers. What if your brand could be featured right here? This ad spot could be yours. This channel is watched by a dedicated audience of ambitious founders, executives, and professionals who are actively looking for tools and services to help their business grow. If you want to put your brand in front of this highly dedicated audience that's difficult to reach, I'm currently looking for a few strategic partners for the channel. To learn more about sponsorship opportunities, click the link in the description. Let's grow together. I think that's really, really, really important. I talk to so many people that are trying to start a business or have actually started a business. Even some of them are doing $20, $30, $50,000 a month. Some of them are even at $100,000 a month that are young. It's their first business. They still don't really know what they're doing. And when I talk to them about their goals, they've never even thought about them.
Yeah.
They have no idea why they're doing the business. They have no idea where they're taking it. They just know I'm making money and I want to make more. And when I go, why are you doing this? They're like, I don't know. It makes money.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's all well and good until you hit a down spell, right? Because that's hard to get through if you don't have a bigger answer to the why question. The motivation and desire and the why that underlies it isn't just money, is the thing that kind of like gets you through the tough times. And I also found too that like it's all well and good when the projects are just rolling in referrals and stuff like that. But everyone's going to hit those bumps in the roads where it slows down. You need to understand how to kind of manufacture some of those sales and some of those leads when they're not just kind of showing up. You know what I mean? So that's another kind of thing that we never thought about until we had actual bills to pay.
Mm. And that's something that happened to me in a business. So after I stopped my startup 3 years ago, I started thinking about what I could do. And there was nothing in particular that ever really drove me as much as that the idea of the startup drove me, which I lived and breathed it for 4.5 years. And I was really passionate about it. And I'm still passionate about the idea. And I still talk to people that think it's great. But unfortunately, we just weren't there. We were too early and all that, and ran out of money, unfortunately.
Right.
So since then, I've tried multiple different things, and what I found was referrals are really great. Either when I have something that people are referring to me, or if I'm referring people to somebody else, because having my own business just it doesn't work for me very well. It's just not the kind of thing that I like to do. I think it's much better to find people that need something and connect them to the people that can provide that service, because let them do all of the work and I get the money.
Right. Fair enough.
And so there was this business I was working on. Well, there was a friend's business I was referring clients to, and it's around meta agency ad accounts. So like for helping, for the people who don't know, it's a special kind of account that's created by the representative of Facebook, who makes the account stronger than if you just make your own account, and you can have lines of credit and you can scale. It's like most people, they start off with $100, $200 a day that they can spend, and then you have to grow over time, where with these accounts you could literally spend $1 million on day one if you wanted to. So Obviously, I haven't seen anyone do that. And so what I was doing was bringing black hat clients, because those black hat clients are used to getting their accounts banned, and we were providing them a service that they couldn't really find elsewhere. We were charging a monthly fee, we were charging a setup fee, we were charging, a few percent of their spend. And so all I had to do was bring them the client. He sold them, and every month that they were there, I got, some of the monthly, and when they spent, I got some of the referral. So it was a great business for me. He was doing all of the work, and I got 50% of the revenue. It was an amazing deal. And within like the first 3 or 4 months, I scaled it to, it was like $5,000-6,000 a month in passive commission for me. It was working really well. Then like August came. This is about 2 years ago. Then August came, and all of a sudden they all started canceling. And I didn't know what happened. I couldn't figure it out. I was trying really hard to cross that 10,000 mark. It would be, who doesn't want $10,000 a month in passive income, right? That's like everyone's dream. And it just started to die, and I lost my motivation, and I said, screw it. Because a lot of the people I was talking to were quite young and quite degenerate, to be fair. And they were first time business owners. Weren't even business owners. They were just like selling these sweepstakes and some things that were not terribly above board. A lot of them were doing penis pills and uh, you know just things that, do I really want to spend my days helping people sell these things to other people? Not really, even though the commissions were great. So I didn't have this thing that like drove me beyond the money. So when it started to die, I kind of lost my passion for it. And I just said, look, I'm out. It doesn't make sense. But while it was running great. It ran for like 7 or 8 months, and then it just died. And I was like, I'm not going to figure this out. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's kind of how it goes, right? Like, whereas if it was something that really had a deeper purpose for you, that you could have found the motivation to continue to stoke the fire and kind of get through that dry spell. So yeah, like, it's critical to have that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make money.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, at the end of the day, we all need to, right? And that's got to be a big part of it, because the flip side of that coin is like, you can do the thing you love as much as you want, but if it's not going to pay the bills and you're doing it 10, 12 hours a day, like, that doesn't work either. So, the ideal is the overlap of that Venn diagram. And stuff you love to do that you can get lost in deep work for a long time and it pays well. It's kind of the magic middle.
Sure. So how soon would you make those goals and set them and focus on working backwards? Because I think it's people don't really think about it. So
Yeah, I think it can't hurt to just do it right out of the gate, right? And just like kind of do it lean, do like an MVP version, because you're going to be guessing, right? You don't really know what you're going to be selling things for. This kind of factors into another point I wish I would have done back when I started. Um, but you don't really know what you're going to be selling things for. You don't know what your close rates are going to be. You don't know anything like that. But take a stab at it, like make a hypothesis out of the gate. Do it for a month, 2 months, a quarter, and then at that point you'll have a little bit of data, and then you can actually like figure out what the numbers are, and then you can go chase down what you need to do. You know what I mean? And then that kind of like leads into one of the kind of following points for me that we didn't do that I wish we would have done, was just kind of reinvesting into promotion. Like
mm,
we did it. We paid ourselves the meager amounts of money that we made for the first few years, and we just tried to do like everything ourselves. We didn't spend anything on a marketing strategy. We didn't spend anything on SEO or PPC or anything like that. It was like bare bones, free tools, super cheap shit, whatever we could do to save a buck. And like, I think that in retrospect, that really is a super risk averse approach, probably too far on that side, that hindered our growth. So now, if I were looking back on it, I would have earmarked the portion of that revenue that we were bringing in for promotion. And it doesn't need to be like something crazy expensive either. There are newer firms that start up at the same time as us. Do like a work swap with them. You know what I mean? If you can get buddy buddy with an SEO firm, or something like that, and you can do a bit of work for them. If you have a complimentary service, they can do a bit of work for you. I think that would have made a big difference for us in the start too.
which would you invest in first? Paid ads or organic growth?
Now,
If you were to start an agency today, right? Which channel would you go after first?
I think it would probably if I had a bit of cash, I'd probably do paid ads. Organic growth is pretty slow. Um, Paid ads kind of rubber hits the road a little bit faster. Of course, everything, the whole chain of lead gen needs to be in place. Probably do it that way. But the other side of it too, and this isn't really like paid marketing or visibility, but like the strategic partnerships angle is probably one I would chase down in tandem.
Can you explain more in depth?
Yeah, we kind of stumbled into a strategic partnership with a Ruby on Rails dev shop that had no designers. So we did all their UX, UI interface design. And it was just because we kind of met each other and kind of worked out. It wasn't intentional, but it ended up being this really kind of fruitful partnership because we would refer them projects that we didn't have the dev chops to build. We would do it together. They would do the same thing when they needed UX UI design. And so it's just this whole other source of continuous projects and leads for us. Um, so chasing down a few more of those, like, small biz consultants, even like, yeah, we ended up working a little bit with search engine firms because we were a web shop, but we weren't hardcore SEO, anything like that. So I'd probably invest in some of those alongside, the paid ad side of things as well.
So that's something that I'm working on right now. We spoke about it. You met Mark, the owner of the agency. So for those who aren't aware, I've invested in an automation agency, and what I'm doing for the business as their investor is I'm not involved operationally, but I'm building the referral network. And actually, I spoke with Jeff about this because I believe that some of his clients could potentially be clients for the agency. And so that's my focus, because the founder doesn't have time to build that referral network. And I just happened to come across through doing these interviews a number of people that either are a potential client or serve our potential clients. So this is something that I found is really valuable. And that's how I built my 8-figure agency, was because I had built a network of people who were bringing me clients and I was rewarding them handsomely because I could afford to. I've mentioned this before. Some of the commissions were $15,000, $20,000 because we were doing 6-7-figure work. And it was really, really valuable for them. And so when they saw those commissions hit, they were really excited to come and bring more clients as fast as possible. So I do believe that there's a huge strength in that because, for example, the pitch that I make to some of the other people that I talk to besides yourself is, look, you've got a strategy, you're coaching them, you're telling them what they should be doing, but you don't have the ability to do a technological implementation within their business to make those things stick. So you can have your strategy and we can help you implement it in that business. And so that's really been resonating. So, this may not work specifically based on the agency that a company, that someone is running, but, obviously think about what your agency does and then look for people that could benefit. Like I was going to PR firms, and because I noticed that a lot of PR firms were bringing me their clients to be interviewed. And so I started building relationships with the PR firms because they're used to just passing off the client to have an intro call, where I actually was saying to them, hey, I want to talk to you too. Let's do a call before I talk to your client, because if they pitch me one of their clients, fine. But if I have a 20-minute call with them, they might have 10 clients that they need to, they realize would benefit from being, interviewed by me. And so now I don't have to go and find nine other people to interview. I can just have those people come to me. So I do less work and I can tell them the kind of people that I want that are going to benefit the automation agency or the other people that I'm referring to services to. So these strategic partnerships can help you save a lot of time and energy and build your business much faster.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Like, and I think the part that people miss a lot is it needs to be mutually beneficial. People think about strategic partnerships or they talk about partnerships, but they kind of go into it with a take attitude. You know what I mean? Like, what can I get from this person? And I've found it works a lot better if you just go in to give and you go in to help out first, and then like the people who in turn give back to you, those are the ones that you double down on. But if you go into these kinds of relationships just looking to take, or the other person's looking to take, it doesn't work. It needs to be mutually beneficial. Then it can turn into this kind of flywheel relationship. where it's just one firm feeding the other, everybody's winning, everybody's getting paid, everyone's clients are happy. Um, that's like really where it becomes like a monumental thing.
So I wanted to ask about like first clients. And a lot of people are starting an agency and they don't know how to get their first client. And you were saying if you had cash, you would then go into the ads. Something that I was thinking about was, if I were to do a service business again, I'm looking for things where they're paying 5, 6 figures because two, 3, 4 figures. It sucks. It's a lot of work, and you're serving people that generally they care so much about that little amount of money they're giving you that they're going to be difficult to manage. So how do you craft an offer that can then get those clients that are paying 4 figures or 5 figures even? Because that's
The value needs to be there, you know what I mean? And that's a kind of a very consultanty answer, but like, you know, if you're a graphic designer and you're doing logos and business cards and stuff like that, like, and that's where I started, that's where my heart lies. So no dissing graphic design firms. But like, that's hard, right? That's a competitive field and it's been kind of commoditized, and you can't be a single freelancer just getting out of the gates charging people, $50,000 for that kind of work, or $100,000 for that kind of work. It's just not going to fly. Um, where you have to position your sort of offer, and you need to have the experience and expertise to be able to do it, is to say, have the conversation with the prospect, figure out what the true value of this thing is going to be. So, for example, if I'm consulting with an agency who has zero sales process, they've kind of stumbled upon $1 million of referral work a year or something like that. They're a small firm. If I come in and say I can install the sales process that's going to net you guys another 500K to $1 million a year, that's huge value. And so they're going to easily pay me 100K to do that, even if it's going to take me 2 months. You know what I mean? So that's a good example of the value of the work is so high that you can charge a premium for it. But you also have to have the proof and the experience that you can do that kind of work, or else I don't know why people would actually buy into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that you said that because I think a lot of people don't understand the value that they provide because I think a lot of services are commoditized, unfortunately. When I first started doing that business many years ago, I was focused on fundraising, which is very commoditized. Like, you just give me 5% and that's it. But then I came across people that, oh, give me an upfront fee as well. And you're like, oh, interesting. Okay. Because like there's a million companies that want to get funded, but there's not a million companies that are going to get funded. Maybe 10,000 of them may get funded. And you may end up spending a year serving 30 of them and getting zero because you picked the wrong companies to get funded and they paid you nothing up front and you couldn't get them any money on the back end. So you work really hard for them and get nothing. And so when I saw, okay, these people are charging up front, then that's interesting because now you can feed yourself and it gives you the space to market. It gives you the space to go out and build that network, to go and actually work for them and to try to help them to raise money. I didn't do that myself, but it taught me something. And I had also learned when I was advising, and then they wanted me to do other services as well, how to add people to like as I needed to bring them in to provide the extra value. Because if they come to you and they need something, when you talk to them, you realize they actually need a lot more, but they don't realize that they need that. And so when you get to know them and they trust you and you say, I think you would also benefit from this. And they say, well, I'm already working with you. I trust you. Sounds good. Who is that? Is this your team? Is this an external person? And you go, well, it's an external person. Let me introduce you to them. They're more likely to work with that person. That person's going to provide additional value to them. And you're going to get a commission for bringing that person work. And you're making the company even happier, and they trust you even more, and they want to stick with you for longer because they're also hoping that as they grow and their pains grow, that you can help them to solve additional problems that may not be your core strength, but that you know someone that can do it. So that's a one strong way to provide value. Another strong way you're talking about is based on what is your gain. And that was something that I learned from my mentor a long time ago, that as you said, if I'm going to consult you and I'm going to bring you revenue that's another million or 2 million, then you should be paying me 100K, not 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, because the value is just not commensurate with what you're paying.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like a lot of a lot of folks early on in their agency or consultancy service sort of business are can be scared to put those numbers in front of clients, right? They're worried about overpricing the client right out of the gate and losing the work, right? That maybe they desperately need. And one of the things I wish I'd known back when I started my firm and would have done had I known that we adopted much later was the kind of three options approach. I don't know if you've heard about this. I've learned about it from Blair Ann's, which is Win Without Pitching. Basically, what it is you don't just give the client one quote for one piece of work. To your point earlier, you figure out what their problem is, usually with a wedge offer, like a diagnostic or something like that. And then you come back to them with three different ways you could solve the problem. And those should be widely ranging in cost. And I found when we started to adopt that kind of three options model that my fear of overpricing a client and losing them went out the window because there's always going to be two versions that were in their budget. So if the client said, I have 150 grand to build this thing, I would say, okay, cool. We'd give them, $150,000 quote. Here's what you get. We would give them maybe $125,000 quote. Here's what you get. But then we would give them the $400,000 quote and say, here's what this is going to do. All the things you haven't thought of, all the problems that you haven't really dug into. We would give them this on a one pager, and we would walk them through it on the phone. And it's surprising, A, how it removed the fear of us swinging for the fence. B, how our close rates went up and our average sale value went up. So like that whole option of having three options in the proposal to any client right out of the gate, something I wish I would have done earlier too.
Do you present the highest option first, or do you present it last?
First, the way that I was taught was you come in with a high option and you say, option one, it has a name, whatever it is, like valued partnership is $500,000. And you just go right to the number and it's like a bomb goes off and you let it sit there for a minute. And then you say, here's what you get. Here's what you don't get. Here's the reason you picked this one. And then you go to the next one. And what that does is anchor the client super high. That way, the middle option seems a lot more reasonable. Also, when you go to the next option, the middle option, you're removing stuff. And that's now you're playing into loss aversion, right? You're not upselling them. They're not getting things. And the tendency for us as people, the psychological side of it is to be like, oh, but I want that thing. I was going to have it. Now it's getting removed. You know what I mean? So it's a bit of price bracketing and price anchoring, and also a little bit playing into loss aversion.
So based on that pricing strategy, you're playing to get the middle tier.
I'm kind of planning to get both, but yeah, like you're aiming for the middle-ish. Most people pick the middle, right? Because the big one's big and usually way above their stated budget. And also, I would position the cheap one as the cheap one. And people don't want to be cheap, right? And they're looking at these options and they're like, I don't want to be the cheap guy. This middle one seems all right. And this is like, you've seen it on a million SaaS pricing pages, right? It's this exact same psychological effect.
Well, on SaaS pricing, normally that scary one is usually enterprise. Please contact us for pricing.
Yeah, totally.
So you don't actually get exposed to it.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? Like, and I think that's probably just because it's really difficult. Like it's difficult to have a SaaS pricing page that any web visitor in the world can see and have a price that would work. They want to actually get the enterprise client on the call to figure out the scope so they can price it properly. Whereas, like, if you're a consultant, you've already had this style of conversation, so you can go away and come back with a customized kind of three option sheet.
What else have we not mentioned that you think is really valuable to mention about something you've learned?
I think probably the last one would be planning for growth. We were very reactive. We get too busy and then I go, oh shit, I need a backend developer. We get too busy and now I need a project manager. And it was totally reactive hiring. And then eventually we sort of figured out what the company looked like. And the analogy that's kind of in my brain is like, when you start building a deck or something like that, you don't just start hammering boards together, right? You at least like sketch it out on a napkin. You have a general idea of what you're going to do. And then you go start building it to plan. But we don't agencies often just start hammering boards together when they're building their company. And so what we did that worked really well for us is we would like literally map out our version one, the kind of scrappy startup sort of thing. And then we map out our version 1.5 and our version 2, our version 2.5, our version 3, and scaling up, but not just like, not only the roles and accountabilities for the firm, but also the financial side of it. So, how many um, people in this development role, what's their billable time target, what's their true salary, all that kind of stuff, what's our real shop rate, so you can figure out what the revenue and profitability potential of the company in each of those versions would kind of be. And then you can start to actually like work towards a vision of the company that is 5 million instead of 2, and it's, you're following a plan as opposed to just randomly doing it.
Mhm. When Mark and I were doing our last tech company together, he was my COO and he did all of that stuff. He was like, "Oh, we need an org chart, we need this and that," and I was like, "All right, go for it," because he understood how to tie financials to the planning. Because the investors, for people that want to raise money from investors, even when you're really early, the investor's like, okay, how much are you raising and where is it going? And you have to be able to show this like 5-year plan for like, I'm going to hire this person, then this person, then this person, then this person. It's like this month we're going to have 20 people. Next month we're going to have 22 people. Next we're going to have 25 people. What are their salaries? How does this impact the organization? How does the chart evolve? And because when you're looking at raising millions of dollars, where you're going to be hiring dozens or hundreds of more people with that money, so the vast majority of the money you're hiring is going towards being able to create more value for the company. In that early stage, it's not about revenue and how does revenue allow growth, but rather we're borrowing this money in order to create this growth that isn't going to create revenue so fast. So it's a very different
Yeah, 100%.
mindset. But yeah, if you ask me to do all of that at the scale that he was doing it, I can't do that. But it was something that he did.
Yeah, for sure. But it's helpful to make sure you're kind of, the ship is pointed in the right direction. You know what I mean? I don't think you need to do it necessarily like immediately out of the gate, but at a certain point you do.
Right. So on the VC side, you have to do it. So, in the case that we only raised $1 million, in the case that we raised 3 million, in the case that we raised 5 million, right? So you have to do multiple cases over multiple years. You have to create multiple models along with P&L models. You have to create P&L models based on, you have to create P&L and org chart models based on that 1, that 3, that 5, right? And it's a 3 or a 5 because some investors want 3 or 5. So it's like a lot of work. And he got very frustrated fairly because we kept changing those targets and changing those models and changing the raise amounts. So he's like, when are we just going to have the money and be done with it?
I get you, man. It'd be much easier that way.
Yeah. So we both much prefer service-based businesses because you don't have to think about a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, it's totally fair. And it's nice when, if you're like able to just like reinvest in the company, then you're the boss. You get to call the shots. That everything has its pros and cons, but I found that really I enjoy that freedom, I guess.
Yeah, I do too. What is the most important thing you've learned in your life so far?
Most important thing I've learned, I don't know. It's probably that we are more than just one thing. And what I mean by that is that I think when we are involved in building our businesses, we identify as entrepreneurs, and that gives us value. And I think that's really important. But I think it's important to understand that we're more than that. That entrepreneurship, that side can go away at any point. And if that's what your entire identity is wrapped up in, then all of a sudden you have no identity. You know what I mean? And you know what it's like. Businesses are hard. Sometimes they fail, and it's nothing on you. It's not anything you particularly did. So I think for me, especially as I was staring down um, after my sale, staring down my exit, I really had to like come to terms with the fact that like I wasn't going to be an entrepreneur, or at least I wasn't going to be Jeff who ran Paperleaf anymore. You know what I mean? So I needed to figure out more about who I was and identify as, a backcountry skier and a mountain biker and all these things I enjoyed to do, but kind of had put on the back burner.
And this was 2.5 years ago that you sold the company.
Yeah, I sold it in 2020, I think. And then I was around for 3 years for a transition period. And then I left at the end of 2023.
And what have you learned from that? You said you had things on the back burner. You started to, I guess, do those activities that you loved again. So what have you learned since you left the business?
I learned that I was burned out, and that's why I left. I wasn't loving the business anymore. But when I had, I took basically the last year and a bit totally off, and I was just skiing. I moved to a mountain town, built a house there, skiing, riding my bike, doing all that kind of fun stuff, and it's a great lifestyle. But I missed the business side, and I missed using my brain for that kind of work. And so I ended up coming back into the agency consulting side, um, truly because like I enjoy helping businesses run a little bit better. And I learned that because I got fired up when I'd hear people talk about working for shittily run places, and it would drive me nuts. And so that kind of clued me into the fact that I love business and I don't want to leave it entirely behind, but I do want to have a better balance than I had before, which was just it took up too much of my life back then.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this insight, I've handpicked another video for you right here on the screen. For more actionable strategies that get you real results, hit subscribe.